has some interesting questions for us, and we would love it if you not only interact, but I think at this point it would be a great time to tell you to please switch on your videos. We would love to see faces, not black boxes and names. Please do switch on your videos. This is a non-judgmental space. I promise you, we will not judge you for your environment or how you look or what you're doing. So please feel free to switch on your videos. We will have a Q&A session towards the end, but like I said, feel free to put your questions in the chat during the session as well. And towards the end, we will share a small feedback form which helps us to understand how this session was for you and what you would like to see maybe going forward as well. So please take the time to fill that out as well. Great. So, with all that behind us, I'm so excited about today's session. It's, usually I'm a mental health practitioner as well, and usually when we speak to people, what is your biggest problem? And most likely people will say my feelings or my emotions are my biggest issue. And today we're kind of going to look behind why these emotions even exist, why they seem to keep coming and troubling us as we see them, and hopefully at the end of the session we won't feel like that's trouble because we'll understand what they're trying to say. We'll look at how our emotions are shaped not only by external but also our internal world and how we react and how we behave because of that, right? And most importantly, we'll see how to not be troubled by them, befriend them, make them our friend, and really understand um, what's happening, why they're there, try to listen to them, and maybe even respond with a little compassion towards ourselves. So, with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Adithy, who, I'm so excited that she's here. She's written a lot of articles on this topic, and she's a counseling psychologist based out of Pune in India, involved in education, prevention, intervention, and postvention work in the world of mental health for about 25 years. She's received her PhD from VU Amsterdam for transdisciplinary research in understanding and addressing stress and trauma with a focus on interventions for users and providers of mental health services in India. She is passionate about learning and sharing effective methods of healing. She has designed, facilitated, and organized programs, especially for empowering mental health professionals. I think that's such a unique niche that you thought about, Dr. Aditi. Thank you for doing that. She was a practicum facilitator for EMDR psychotherapy trainings in India and Nepal, and is a training assistant and consultant for integral somatic psychology. um, I think we hear very little about somatics in India, and I'm glad that you're one of the possibly the pioneers in the field here. She initiated trauma therapy for disabled soldiers, co-led volunteers for psychosocial support after disasters, ran study groups for trauma and dissociation, and organized large-scale training in trauma during COVID pandemic. She has jointly developed and implemented programs for suicide prevention and survivor support that's very close to our hearts, as you know. She has co-authored articles in international journals of mental health. She's a board member, fellow faculty, and co-chair of annual conference committee of the International Society for Study of Trauma and Dissociation. I think that's a lot of qualifications, and we better pay attention today. I think she's going to bring a wealth of information and I think more importantly, skills for us to deal with our own emotions. So, thank you, Aditi, again for being here with us. And I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Anu, Arun, and Dolly, Samachita Foundation, and Pukar Helpline for organizing this and hosting this. Um, I just want to request, since it's going to be recorded and sometimes someone wants to speak, if it's okay, then for privacy's sake, I don't know if you can spotlight me, then maybe people can speak without um, worrying about privacy. or if you can, if you would like to put your comments or questions or answers in the chat, then I would request Anu to read it out. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, thank you. So, welcome everyone. And I just want to, I was wondering, like, you would have heard quite a bit about emotions and how to deal with them in your readings or even hearing other people. And I wondered, what makes you come here today? If you could voice it out, unmute yourself and say it, or even put your answers in chat.
I can go first while people are kind of making up their minds. Oh, there's Dr. Pratibha saying, wanted to listen from you, self-implementation. That's her reason. Um,
Yeah.
Mine is really, I think I'm a crusader for um, saying no, there are no bad emotions, and I want more justification and more meat for that, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Any other reasons, anyone? Anything that you are even, yeah, go ahead. Mm.
I want to see why my mood swings are happening several times a day. So sometimes the morning I'll be very happy, and after the work stress, my emotions are changing. Want to get an insight onto that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Bin. Mm.
Yeah, I think I'll just quickly add also that the what I realized with my own experience is that emotions are more finer and more specific when you go when you really explore your emotions. It's not necessarily happy doesn't mean just happy. There are so many variants of happy and different reasons, situations, etc. The more finer you understand it, the better. And so I have a personal journey to go and understand these finer emotions, and I'm always curious to know, what are those different ways that people look at it, and yeah.
We
Thank you.
also have two comments on the chat. Malika says, want to know more on emotional dissonance in our cultural context. And Dr. Tatiksha says, want to know more about emotions directly from the master herself. Me too.
I would actually like to say that I'm a learner about emotions and how they work. So I'm maybe as much a learner as you are, maybe traveled a little more on this path to understand, but I'm really happy to share in a way that is practical and usable. Um, so that's my intention for today.
Anurag,
So
you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
My take was like I feel that my emotions affect me strongly. So I want to understand where they come from and how do I handle them better so that I become a better person for myself.
yeah, thank you. So let's sort of dive in. So one way to uh, look at emotions or to understand where they are from and how um, what brings about a particular kind of emotion, even a shade of emotion, as you were mentioning, Arun. Each emotion, such as say anger, might have a range, like from uh, being slightly irritated to rage, similar for other emotions. And um, we know, as Veena mentioned, they don't really uh, exist in isolation. And at the beginning of the day, when things are not very stressful, there are particular emotions. But later, when something stresses us, then emotions change and their shades or intensity also change. So I just want to let me start my slide and maybe dive in. Mm. Is it all visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. So, so I use this picture of a stick figure of a person, where the arrow coming in can be represents like something outside of us, our personal space, or outside of us as an organism has happened. Like for example, the the boss saying something about the work that we have done. Um, so, and then when that external event happens, what happens inside? So we're going to look at not just emotion in isolation, but what are the combinations, things that are happening inside, and then what is coming outside from us to the outside as well. That's what the external arrow represents. So here I'm using an acronym of affect, behavior, cognition, and somatic. ABCs for example, just for ease. Affect is another word for emotion and their experience in the body, but I'm going to separate the body separately as somatic, the S word. And so emotion, as we know, so like all these anger, sadness, fear, uh, uh, anxiety, uh, happiness, all of these are emotions. And then the B stands for behavior or behavioral urge, which is behavior is something that we do, um, that is sort of noticeable by someone else. It could be saying something, it could be harsh, or somebody crying, and that would be behavior. Somebody who is not getting out of their room for a few days or hours, that would be a behavior. And behavioral urge will be something like we are not actually doing the behavior. Like I feel like punching somebody, but I'm actually not punching. So that would be an urge. And cognitions, or in other words, beliefs, are beliefs about ourselves and also about the world. So uh, many people have tried to categorize them in different ways. So I'll use one example here. Our beliefs can be in the different types. One is like, I'm not good enough. Another, I'm not in control. Another, I'm not safe. Another, I don't belong. So similarly, there, I'm not lovable. I'm not tall enough, short, wealthy enough, intelligent enough, all those not enough types. And sometimes it can also be, I am responsible, as in that might sound like an okay thing, but sometimes if I'm working with say 10 other people, but I feel if the project didn't meet the deadline, I feel all the responsibility. So that would be, I am responsible. Or in a family, say like uh, someone's ill or somebody got into an accident, and I'm saying I am responsible for it. Like this might come up in the case of, say, death of somebody in the family, where I did something wrong, and that's why no, I didn't get them to the hospital early enough, and that's why they passed away. So that kind of beliefs will fall into the category of I am responsible for something that's happened or for something. And then, as we know, related to all of these, we have our body experiences. So, say for example, when there is anger, like what do you experience? How do you feel that in the body? Yeah, this is a question for you. Just to share, not you can put in the chat, or you can Yeah, please feel free to unmute and say what that experience of anger feels like.
We have a very quiet room. I think if you're not comfortable unmuting, like she said, you can put it on chat as well. Um, but for me, I think it would be I can sense a faster heart rate when I'm angry, maybe, or more shallow breathing. Yeah, I think Malika also says breathing fast in the chat. Restlessness is another response from Dr. Pratibha. Anurag says, I felt angry when I couldn't clean my house, even on the weekend. Gitanjali says, irritated. How does it feel in the body is your question. Tightness in the body, Dr. Satiksha says.
Yeah,
Helpless, Gitanjali.
Yeah, I think for me, it's usually this uh, kind of a panic or a fear pang, right? Somewhere in the middle of the body, just right above the stomach, and I go cold. So that happens, and the responsibility thing that you mentioned kind of synced with me because I take a lot of things onto my head, and that hyper responsibility sometimes starts just weighing me down. Yeah.
Thanks, Arun. And Bina also says it's a headache sometimes. She's angry.
yeah.
Get in overthinking mode.
Yeah, right. Great. So there were many responses somewhere in the that body sensation and body. How do you experience that feeling inside? And also like some came in the form of a response where uh, something like okay, so this is a reason why anger came, as Anurag says, that when I couldn't clean my house or even on the weekend, then the anger came. So that's like almost like an external event, but it's not external. So this is indicating that the external arrow that I represented for the stick figure, that arrow can also be from the inside itself. So we could say things to ourselves that can uh, that can generate an emotion as well. So mm, to okay, great. So many of you could relate to this question of how does it feel in the body. Um, so now let's look at uh, yeah. Um, in the current times, it could be something going on for your family, it could be what's going on around the world. Can we now pause to also understand what might be some of these beliefs that are sort of driving these emotions? I'm not saying one happens before the other necessarily, they are interconnected. So, if at all there are certain beliefs that they may not even pop up, but they might be in the background. If you could really maybe connect with, for example, you can take an instance to look at it yourself. It can be uh, any emotion, doesn't have to be anger, and then share about okay, what is it that I'm thinking. I'll give you an example to start with. Or let's since there's already a shared example here. um uh, so when I couldn't clean my house even in the weekend, I felt angry, right? So what does it mean that I couldn't clean my house in even in the weekend? What would it mean to you if that was for you? I'm not necessarily asking to the person who wrote it, but it's for us to explore.
Aditya, are you trying to say what does it mean? What does it tell us about ourselves? Like it could tell me that I'm inefficient or I'm lazy. That's what the thought that
Exactly.
comes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm inefficient, I'm lazy. Those are um, beliefs that are sort of getting, I would say, activated in this sort of given condition of us, which is created by the external world or by ourselves. So does that make
Anurag
sense?
also says, Anurag says, I feel I'm not
Yeah, I'm not
efficient enough.
efficient enough. Yeah,
I'm
right.
not able
That
to
would be
manage
a
my time.
yeah, that would be one of those not enough type of belief that pops up. Yes. Not able to there's another one, the chat saying I'm not able to manage my time appropriately and strategize my work. So that is also about I'm like I'm not able to for whatever reason. So that might further mean that one of those labels like I'm not efficient, I'm not capable, I'm not some kind of enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, or knowledgeable enough to organize my day. And it could be any of those. And for any person, it could vary. What exactly is the belief that is beneath these emotions, or what is getting activated in a situation like this will vary from person to person. Mm, yeah, I'm not as able as I should be. Yeah, great. You're getting right into these beliefs that are beneath. Now, even when these beliefs exist of a particular type, um, our thoughts might or the self-talk might be different. Sometimes it's not even the talk is not about oneself, it could be about the other person who is making things difficult for us. But beneath all that, there is likely to be beliefs about ourselves or sometimes even the world. For example, I got bad marks in an exam, and um, there might be the belief that I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough student. But I might, and I might immediately start to blame the teacher for saying that, oh, the teacher's so biased against me that she didn't give me good marks. So uh, there is some like a dynamics that are happening between what are we believing about ourselves, what emotion arises. So in this particular case of the marks, the emotion that might be arising for me could be shame or embarrassment or disappointment. But when an emotion like that arises, we can our behavior or behavioral urge can go in multiple directions. One is to maybe attack the other, attack oneself. It could be withdrawing from the world or avoiding things. And these are some examples of what that behavioral urge would could look like. And why would we be doing these things? It is generally, again, I just want to say as a disclaimer that this is a very simplified kind of talk on emotions. So everything there are lots of researchers who have tried to understand emotions and the interconnectedness at various levels, at biological level, at brain, and that to specific parts of the brain level kind of research, and other interpersonal kind of research, body, what's happening at the body level kind of research, including um, what is the temperature of the body at different places corresponding to emotion. So there's a vast amount of research out there, and studies are still being conducted with newer accessibility to say brain and chemistry of the brain and all that, and brain and body. But this is just like to sort of bring many things together, including these connections between beliefs, emotions, and body and everything. So let's move on. Okay. I'm going to skip this because we have already answered this. Now, what makes an emotion? How do we? I know you mentioned about some or been also mentioned about the variations in emotions. I don't. You also mentioned the range and so Daniel Siegel, who's again a mental health researcher in UCLA in Los Angeles, and has originally come up with this idea of what's called a window of tolerance. So we have some kind of tolerance limit for many things, including pain. So for some people, even mosquito biting can be very intolerable, but somebody else like a big cut and they're bleeding and they're not bothered about it. So similarly, just like pain, as we mentioned here, we have tolerance for different emotions in a range. Say, for in the earlier example that I said, the shame, if I have, like, many of us have very little tolerance for shame. So anybody putting us down, again, we might want to punch them or blame them, or we might want to withdraw or even go into soothing methods like having drink or binge watching something or drugs or things like that. Those kinds of, I mean, any behavior, through any behavior, we are really trying to cope with what is arising for us. And what is arising for us are those emotions, are those beliefs, and they're all interconnected, and what we experience in the body level also. So if our heart is beating really fast and we are also then getting worried about that, that itself will take us beyond the threshold of that emotion. Say, for example, if it's fear or anger. So now, if we want to sort of change anything related with our emotion or the corresponding behaviors, or even the beliefs beneath it, we can understand first that they are interconnected, and we can understand that we all have only limited tolerance for each of these things. And when our tolerance window, the boundaries of it is reached, then we are going to do something like that we do to cope with that intensive, I mean, big difficulty. So think of it as like during Diwali time, if you have like pet dog in the house, you can see how difficult it is for them to tolerate the noise, the sound, or even for us, if it goes beyond a certain limit, it becomes too much. Or like even hearing the news these days, when it is like day after day, we'll reach a limit that maybe I don't know, cut off from news or something like that. So when we notice, how do we notice that we are reaching the limits of our tolerance? One way is to look at our behaviors. As I mentioned, if I feel like really closing my ears or not watching the news anymore, so that itself is an indication that, okay, this has become too much for my window. Okay. And other ways to look at it is, as you mentioned, say the heart beating really begins to beat fast, and it reaches a certain level, and we know that, okay, it is too much. Sometimes we can have not be able to sleep much, or you're getting irritated at others, so the behavior again becomes an indication. I'm say shouting at others, or it could also be. So these are so far what I mean. Some we can go into a high energy act zone, which is in the window itself. There are like somebody when they're feeling anxious, they're pacing up and down, can't sit in one place. So that would be a high energy side of the window. Sometimes the same person can go into a very low energy, shut down kind of state, or even depressed kind of feeling. That would be the low energy side of the window. So we can notice ourselves, or maybe someone else would notice and let us know that, hey, you've not been talking much. Your bubbly self is not, I mean, not visible anymore. Somebody might say that, or somebody might say that, why are you getting so irritated about everything that I say? So that would, so these will be indicators, and also noticing the energy level in oneself. So somebody moving into a low energy state or even depressed state might not have the energy to do even some of the daily tasks. Okay, I'm just watching time. So this is sort of clear about the window and about the stick figure, in so what's happening inside. Yeah, any questions you have, if you could ask or put in the chat, this would be a good time.
Uh, I, I think a few years back, maybe around 6, 7 years back, I noticed this exact same framework of what you're saying, right? Uh, being going from these extreme highs to extreme lows, and not knowing, how to even control it or be able to identify it, something's happening, right? And then it builds in the system and then bursts out in different ways, right?
Yeah,
I am
yeah,
somebody that people have never, rarely ever seen me angry. And that doesn't happen because I hold a lot of things inside. And then I process it out so that it doesn't come out in the world. But then that processing, I was not doing it very efficiently. And that burst at one point when I was in the peak state of stress. So I understand, it builds up over time and then you don't know what to do with it.
yeah. So can I ask you one question there? So why aren't you angry?
Uh, I think I have this belief that people are inherently good, but they have their moments, right? But you are also a human, and sometimes you know that this behavior is not okay, but still, uh, I have this identity of being a good person, right? And I
Yeah,
don't, and not being angry is part of being a good person, right? I wouldn't
yeah,
want to react
yeah.
and
Can
spoil a
I,
situation or create a
yeah.
conflict.
So can I ask you where you learned that, like that being a good person is includes not being angry, if it's okay?
Now that you ask, the way I would frame it is, my dad has been like an extremely, I think there was a phase in life where he had to do almost 3 jobs uh,
Mhm.
to just get the house running. We were 3 kids, so I think he'd had a lot of those moments when he had hit those limits. But as a child, I never understood it. But then, for me, somewhere, I that's the only thing that I would have ingrained, saying that good person doesn't become
Yeah.
angry, right? So,
Yeah. So since you
yeah,
had to experience, you were on the receiving side of the anger, and which wouldn't have been pleasant, so then you
yeah,
decided that, hey, okay, this is not a good person's behavior.
right,
So this takes us to, I would have liked to hear more from others, but since I want to
yeah.
like connect this to a topic, I'll do that here. So, so we all have our beliefs about our emotions also. So now think about, say, if you take those early morning walks down the road, you would have noticed that one dog will start barking. Um, but once we cross their territory of sorts, they'll stop and the next one will start barking, right? So they are being angry or showing that kind of aggression for a purpose. What is that purpose?
They're protecting their territory,
Exactly. So they're
kind of.
protecting their territory, and that is the main reason for our emotion of anger also. And it also helps us, if we were to call it the energy of anger, also helps us to go after what we want, like sort of cross those hurdles that come our way. That also needs our the energy to go after things. So, what happens if we actually not allow that kind of energy to come, whether it is to stop something, I mean, to protect ourselves? It could be, I'm not saying we have to shout and scream and attack somebody all the time, but even to be able to say no is that energy of that protective energy of what we call anger is needed. So if we sometimes completely make that into this is bad, then we are missing out on health. I mean, taking care of our boundary or our space in a healthy way. So the dog that barks as we walk down is only like it is letting us know that, hey, this is my territory, get out of it. It's not coming to really attack us in that first instance. So similarly, we might also need that energy to let the world know that, hey, certain things are not okay. Okay. And I'm happy to share some of these, my short articles that articulate some of these in a little more detail through the emails that Samchita would have got through your registration. To understand this maybe a little bit more because our time is really short. So uh, so you get the idea. So if we looked at the purpose of anger here and why does that exist? Similarly, sadness or expressing the sadness. I think people have studied families of monkeys. So say one monkey that has lost its child and is very, very sad and grieving is taken care of by the family or the extended family or friends or the group of monkeys. So again, when we have sadness and when we express it, mm, it is sometimes it is seen misunderstood as, oh, that's a sign of weakness. But we have these emotions biologically, evolutionarily for a purpose, and that is so that the community can take care of us when, say, sadness is expressed. Similarly, so guilt will help us to maybe change some of our mistakes or like make changes based on the mistake that we feel guilty about. And shame is another emotion, again, a socially related emotion. Originally, uh, like shame will help us to change our ways so that we can be part of the community or group. So the community might indicate that something I did was not right, and the shame might arise, and then that would give me ways to repair it, to reintegrate with the community. But it doesn't always have the same effect, because if the shaming is really harsh and if it sort of becomes like something's wrong about I am wrong rather than what I did was wrong. So what I did was wrong could give rise to guilt and this kind of I am wrong, I am bad, can give rise to shame, which instead of mobilizing us to do something better, it could also bring us down into a state where we feel that, okay, nothing really matters. So, which sometimes leads to, say, act of suicide and things like that. So, um, yeah, so it's important for us to understand our own emotions and for someone else to also try and understand our emotions. So um, we can first understand the purpose, and sometimes the original purpose might be really, really good. But what we are doing may not be effective. Say, for example, I say a side of me criticizes everything that I do. Um, uh, Maybe the intention of that side is to uh, make me improve so that I can become better, I can achieve more, whatever that is. But if even with that intention to improve me, as it lands, if what it's doing is to bring me down, mm, then the intention is not really the act, not the intention, but the act is not working. So we can inquire about with the same intention. Um, is there something else that I can say to myself? So instead of saying, oh, I'm a stupid idiot, if I can maybe encourage myself when I'm doing something right, then I will probably be motivated to do those things right and get to that my mind's intention of improving or achieving more. So even when we work with clients or as we listen to people, we can inquire about this as to, yeah, what is this purpose of you saying that to yourself? Okay. Sorry, was that I sort of brought in a few more things. I'll show it in a slide, which probably helps to understand this better. Yeah, this is a picture which shows that when somebody comes, on the surface there might be a problem, like I want to kill myself because I didn't get good marks in 12th, and but beneath it there might be experiences that are what we call traumatic, and also the person is not just a collection of bad experiences. There might be neutral experiences and also what I've put here as stars, which are some good experiences. So when a person comes, it is good for us to, or good for us to see the whole, see or even assume that beneath the sort of presenting problem of sorts that we see in a mental health center, like I'm coming with depression or anxiety. So beneath that, there are these collection of experiences which we can learn to look at and address. Yeah, the same thing put on a timeline. And then here, this one, this is a model that the model, a therapeutic model that's become very popular called internal family systems, which conceptualizes the different sort of like the different sites or parts um, within us. So we have uh, what's called a self, sorry, self, which is curious, compassionate, and has got confidence and committed and all. But there are also what are called exiles. So these are probably painful experiences or painful emotions that we try to keep away from our awareness. And for the purpose of keeping away, there are managers who are doing that all the time. So somebody might be working all the time, say someone with beliefs that I'm not good enough, and to keep that belief at bay, I might be working over hard on things. And then when the managers can't still keep that from coming from awareness, or it could be like shame feeling. The managers can't keep it from coming. There are what are called firefighters. So sometimes people's behaviors, like cutting behaviors, cutting themselves, uh, um, that kind of drastic things are done by what are called firefighters. So they take these emergency kind of actions in order to avoid these exiles from coming into awareness. So we can be curious about this also when someone does a particular kind of behavior, like what is acting beneath that. So, yeah, so just maybe pause here. We have about 7 minutes, and I wonder there is this emotional freedom technique, which is sort of like a method to sort of, I don't want to say manage, but yeah, sort of manage our emotions, which we could do in a short time. I can demonstrate, we are free to do it along. Or we could pause and take questions that you have. Because EFT, you can see there are YouTube videos for you to learn this yourself. And emofree.com is a website by the originator of this method. Yeah. Anu, you take a call.
Yes. So if there are questions, I think we could do that. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I always have questions, like I told you, Aditi, but I want to see if anybody else has anything either they want to clarify or need help with. Um, uh,
Yeah.
you can
So I'll
raise your
stop.
hand or in the
Yeah.
chat.
I'll stop sharing the.
Sure. And if we don't have questions, maybe we could do this, and then
Yeah.
I could ask you. Does anybody have any questions or clarifications for Dr. Aditya? This is really very well structured. I mean, while we're waiting for the questions, it's really beautifully structured, and I think that the gentle way in which you bring it up is really helpful to. For me particularly, I've heard about these things, but the way in which you've presented it really brought a new perspective. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I need some simplicity in understanding things myself. So
Yeah,
I've created some of these visuals to understand, and I'm happy to share that.
that's really helpful. And in fact, the in IFS, what really struck out for me in that is, I think what you also try to say is that when someone comes to you with something or you're seeing a behavior, we immediately tend to judge that as something, as like I don't know, saying, oh, if somebody's angry, it must be a bad person, he must be this. But to just take that pause and say, okay, there's a whole bunch of things that are going on beneath, under the surface, just as it is for us as for them. It really helped bring home that point. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I also want to say that sometimes when we notice that we are really there are two things happening, right? So it's not difficult. I mean, it's not easy to be on the receiving side of, say, being hit or shouted at or being put down or even neglected, um, unvalued or devalued. All that. I'm not saying that we have to focus on why that person behaved like that.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe there's a positive intention behind that, but on the receiving side, we experience the pain of being on the receiving side.
yes,
And certain beliefs might have emerged from that, saying it could be, I am helpless, powerless. It could be that I am, again, not good enough. It could be that I'm not loved, or I'm not lovable, I don't belong, the world is not safe, I am not safe, I can't trust my emotions, all that. So we are trying to sort of understand these interconnectedness, and we can also begin to repair the impact these external events have had on us
Correct.
using therapeutic methods. So one example is EFT, which is also a self-help tool. So
Mm,
we can learn that. We can also access other therapies, psychotherapies.
right.
Um, like say some are talking therapy, some focus now on like the impact of these traumas. So EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is one such method. There are methods like art therapy, movement therapy. So all these are there.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for bringing that other perspective. It's important not to, just because I understand somebody else where they're coming from doesn't mean I minimize my emotions or the impact it has had on me. And truly that speaks to the experience that you have to bring in that perspective. So thank you for that. There is a question here from Dr. Pratibha. Ma'am, can you give one more case of shame leading to risky behavior like suicide from your experience? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that would be the only question we might have time for.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Maybe I can ask one of mm, Anu, are you aware of any from maybe some callers? If you heard something about how they, mm,
yeah. So,
Shall I tell?
yeah, yes, please.
You wanted to go ahead, Anu? Shall
No,
I?
please go ahead, Dr. Pratibha.
So recently only we are having this case, ma'am, near to us where we are just getting to know that both of them are doctors, and she has done suicide. Her wife has done suicide
yeah.
because she got to know that the doctor is psychiatrist itself, ma'am. The doctor was having extramarital affair where he was working with his colleagues. So she ended up doing suicide. So this is what we came to know. So I was just thinking what might have been there. So when you speak about the shame, I just wanted to understand how the reactions going through shame, uh, how it is doing ahead, what could be her process.
Thank you for that question. So, mm, first of all, an action like suicide or attempt of suicide is not very simple. Okay, that's why I wanted to show that in internal family systems picture. So there might be uh, there are different sides of us that probably do different things to cope with a difficulty that arises. So one might be, there could be an angry reaction. Sometimes that anger is turned towards us. Sometimes there's that intense shame that arises. So, as you know, suicidal actions are connected with the three types of beliefs of worthlessness, helplessness, and hopelessness. So, and beneath it, if we look, we'll need to look at the nuances of what exactly is happening, what beliefs came up for this person when the husband's extramarital affair became clear, and what would be I mean, it's not one belief that would arise. There would be multiple beliefs that arise, and what is then each of those beliefs and emotion combinations then eventually becoming those outwards, which is the behavior or behavioral urge. So I think Marsha Linehan is somebody um, who has who who has done a lot of work on working with people with borderline personality disorder, as it is called then, and suicidal behavior being very attempts being very high amongst that population, has studied this a lot and come up with something called chain analysis of what happened before, and not just happened outside, but internally what's going on. So that kind of a detailed understanding
Yes.
will
Yes.
help. And,
And
yeah.
what again one statement is what that just she don't want her husband to get revealed in the society. That's the reason she kept on taking that thing on her, did not share much. So that's the reason I was thinking, is this shame was involved somewhere, one kind
Yeah.
of emotion?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a valid guess. We can only do some of the what we call these suicidal autopsies to try and understand what might have gone through for that person. So yeah, we can only do the guesswork, but
Yes,
yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you for answering that with so much sensitivity. Really, I'm just amazed at how you bring your experience to the words you use. Thank you, Dr. Aditi. So Arun has shared the feedback form on the chat. It will take you less than 2 minutes to fill that in. Um, I think the session was really a great reminder and also a great putting together in a very simple form what some parts of it which we may know, but I think the way it was presented, it really brought out, for me at least, how beliefs and emotions are connected. And the window of tolerance is something that I've also been focusing on, and really this really helped us to understand, I think, how up to a certain point things are okay, but beyond that, that's where we need to learn to, in quotes, manage, or use help where we feel necessary, to manage these emotions. And most importantly, I think it, for me personally, because I am a crusader of emotions, purpose. Every emotion has a purpose. It is doing its job. It's just there in your body doing its job. It's for us to kind of recognize that and welcome it with curiosity, I think. And you did a great job of using great examples to, bring that, drive that point home. So thank you for doing that. And thank you so much for your time. I know you're traveling and you still made it here. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning.
Thank you, Anu. I